your notebook and get ready because today on the Money Show, we are putting you in control of your financial future. So let's get started, and it's our very special Women's Wednesday edition today, where we put the spotlight firmly on women investors and entrepreneurs. Now, at a time when women's financial empowerment has become a major policy priority, over the past few years, multiple government-backed schemes have been rolled out to expand women's access to credit, savings, and investment opportunities. The Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, now offering collateral-free loans up to 10 lakh, has seen a nearly 70% of its beneficiaries being women. The Stand Up India scheme, which provides bank loans of up to 1 crore for first-time entrepreneurs, has recorded over 80% of its loans going to women-led enterprises. On the savings side, products like Mahila Samman Savings Certificate offered a fixed 7.5% return, saw over 22 lakh accounts opened within months of launch. And the Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, with its high 8.2% interest rate and full tax exemption benefits, has emerged as a cornerstone long-term saving instrument for families planning for their daughters' futures. Meanwhile, initiative like the Lakpati Didi program, it aims to create self-reliant women through income-generating self-help groups, with more than 1 crore women reportedly already crossing the 1 lakh annual income threshold. Now, on paper, the uptake is strong. Participation numbers are rising. Credit disbursements are expanding. Saving mobilization is robust. But the key question remains, what is the real impact on the ground? Are these schemes translating into sustainable businesses, higher workforce participation, and meaningful financial independence for women? Or are structural barriers still limiting progress? And with the union budget just days away, expectations are building once again for stronger policy support, easier credit flows, and more targeted incentives for women-led growth. So, where do we truly stand today? To help us understand the ground reality, I'm joined by Gaura Sengupta of IDFC First Bank. Gaura, hi. Welcome to this very special edition of Women's Wednesday. It's our budget special, but also Women Investor Entrepreneur special. So let's focus on the big picture. Gaura, if we just step back, okay, and look at the last few years, government schemes for women entrepreneurs and investors have seen strong reported participation. Now, from your experience at the banking level, how real is this momentum on the ground?
So I think the good part is if you actually look at the share of women in overall bank deposits, that is gradually increasing, but more needs to be done. Around 35% of overall household deposits are owned by women. That share has to definitely go up. If you look at labor force participation rates, they are picking up. Latest is we are around 35% is the pickup on the participation rate overall as of December 2025. The good bit is if you look at the participation rate in rural areas is actually much higher. It's thanks to the rural area participation. For example, there it's around 40% of women in the working age population that are actually looking for jobs or are already employed. It is the urban side where the participation rate has actually been pretty flat and low at 25%. So if you see a lot of these government schemes, self-help groups, small collateral-free loans for entrepreneurs, all of that, the success rate is also reflecting the fact that in the rural areas, the uptake has been much higher for these sort of sources of allocation.
All right. So definitely, these schemes have been a hit. But also, let's also talk about access to credit, because credit access has historically been a major barrier for women-led enterprises. Now, schemes like Mudra and Stand Up India have expanded lending. But are women entrepreneurs today actually able to secure adequate, timely and repeat financing as their businesses scale? How is that scenario shaping up?
So there definitely is financing, but the issue issue is, I think the traction is more in rural areas rather than urban areas, because in rural areas, the participation and women that are coming into the labor force, and that is also a function of need, rather, the kind of barriers to entry which are there for women, that is equally true, if not more, ever present in the rural areas. But for income generation, actual need for that is much higher in rural areas. So you actually see women are there in the labor force. But even, let's say, a traditionally labor intensive agriculture sector, there is uh, quite a large woman participation that you see in that sector. And many of these schemes, for example, Mudra, where you give a small collateral free loan, you also have specific, let's say, you have Lakpati Didi, Lakpati Behna scheme, etc., which are basically to help in skilling so that the woman entrepreneur can increase her annual income generation. Those, if you apply, there is access. The issue is in the urban areas. I think the traction for the scheme will be lower, because by the virtue of the fact that labor force participation, number of women that are actively looking for employment, either it is self-employed or they are looking for a job, is actually going down. It's currently maybe 25% in 2025. Few years back, maybe it was 26%. So there is where there is availability, and there are many schemes that are targeting women, but the participation rate, at least in the urban areas, there is the challenge. Rural participation rate is good. The reason why you will not see it in bank credit is because the quantum of loans applied will be smaller. So when you see as a proportion of bank credit is a predominantly urban phenomenon. 90% of your bank credit is for urban areas. Only around 10% actually is allocated for rural, though the quantum or the number of small ticket loans will be higher, especially women oriented, I suspect will be higher for the rural areas, by the virtue that there you see greater role of self-help groups. You see actually more entrepreneurship, which is a function of need in the rural areas. Urban, the fact that the labor force participation rate is not picking up indicates that the demand will not be met. So there are schemes, but we have to come up with also measures to motivate women to either create jobs via entrepreneurship or seek jobs.
All right. So, but then, I also want to understand, how does this structural challenge impact women's entrepreneurship and financial independence, and what can realistically move the needle over here when we are talking about, the red flags in the labor force participation? How can we solve it structurally?
Some part of it is cultural. It's a backlog of our cultural background, which is changing with time. As the generational change takes place, that change is happening. Some part of it is also a function of need. Now, with the fact that you, for example, in a metro city, you require two incomes to sustain a certain level of lifestyle. So the participation rate will automatically pick up. And those cultural mindsets will also change gradually. The other threshold is the fact that for example, the caretaking, which is more a burden which falls more on women, whether it is child or even elderly caretaking. So the hurdle that, let's say, women have to cross, which is, let's say, child care, parental care, etc., and then they can come and join the workforce, is significantly higher. If the care economy, that is, the infrastructure is strengthened, so that the ease of you know joining the labor force, getting to that job, is the bird. The I would say the hurdle rate for women is ease. That will really improve urban participation rates, which for now are languishing at, it's hardly 25%. If you look at other countries globally, the participation rates are in 50 to 60% for women. We are, for example, you look at Vietnam, the participation rate for women over there is 60% plus. That is again a function of cultural overhang also, and also the fact that what are the hurdles that you faced to get to that job, which is basically how much of the responsibilities that are falling on you in terms of caretaking, the care economy. So if you can create an environment where that sort of hurdles are reduced, you will automatically see women coming in and you will see the participation rate picking up.
Absolutely. Okay, let's just talk about sustainability of women-led businesses. Now, initial loan disbursement is one part of the story, but sustainability is another. Are we seeing women-led enterprises graduate from small ticket loans to long-term profitable businesses?
That is not just a challenge for women oriented businesses, that's a
Yeah.
challenge for the Indian industry as a whole. Majority of Indian industries are small. The share of large industry is very in the case of India is quite limited. It is more small. For example, majority maybe by employment 90% will be employing up to 10 employees in terms of the way our industrial enterprise is structured. So that is not a women specific issue. It is an industry specific issue where scaling up seems to be an issue. But if you look at the labor code reform that the government, the consolidation of labor codes into 4 codes. So instead of having 200, 300 labor laws, you have four to five codes that they are consolidated in. So there is ease of compliance. They've also increased the threshold, the minimum amount of employees that a company has, where beyond which you have to comply with those labor codes, that has been increased. So these sort of ease of doing business, reducing the compliance burden will provide incentive for a company, women or non-women led, to scale up. But for women specifically, I think the rural areas, it will be skilling, how to ensure that their productivity enhances. In the case of urban areas, I think it will be one, getting funding, specifically for women oriented business, specific help for that. The government has come up with those schemes. Enhancement of those schemes would go in a long way. And that hurdle, that care economy, that sort of reducing that burden on women who are in the working age population will go a long way.
To sum it up, I really want to understand, or maybe your last comments on what policy measures or incentives would you like to see to accelerate women's financial inclusion and entrepreneurship?
From the government perspective, I think they can give incentives for boosting saving and investment behavior for women, and they're already doing that. For example, you have, for example, for the girl child, you have small saving schemes that are particularly targeting for girl child, small saving schemes that are targeting women, or any scheme that incentivize saving and investment behavior within women, and also tax incentives that women can become owners of capital. For example, one of the, for example, house ownership. If there is a tax benefit given for house ownership, if you are a woman that is purchasing it in your name, that to increase the ownership of financial assets, whether it is investment or savings, that will automatically ensure that the kind of the decision making, that there's a greater participation from women. So I would say tax and base incentives to boost that would be key. The other thing the government can do, which I should have mentioned earlier also, is the fact that there's a flexibility, which is very important for women. So certain part-time jobs, not full employment, but sort of part-time jobs, which, for example, in the developed countries, part-time jobs are becoming mainstay because there is a challenge where people need to, balance the work-life balance, and flexible part-time sort of jobs are meeting those needs. In the case of India, most is full employment, but you have part-time sectors where women will definitely participate more. So labor laws to ensure that they have social security. And if you see the latest changes that the labor code has done, they are spreading that social security net to part-time as well as the informal sector. So ensure that there is social security safety net.
Absolutely. So a lot is being done, but a lot more can be done. Gaura, great insights. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yes, we really wait for the budget and more women-led announcements, for their financial inclusion and empowerment. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, it's time for a short break on this particular edition of Women's Wednesday on The Money Show. But then post that, let's answer our women investors or women viewers portfolio related questions. See you after this break.
Co-presented by SBI Life, अपने लिए अपनों के लिए. turbo powered by the all-new Kia Seltos, badass forever. Knowledge partner Deloitte. In association with World Gold Council, Gold ETF, it's आज का gold.
रिस्क प्रोफाइलर के हिसाब से मुझे इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, पर इक्विटी में स्मॉल मिड लार्ज हर मार्केट कैप में अपॉर्चुनिटी है।
तो मल्टी कैप फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कर लो। स्मॉल मिड लार्ज कैप और मल्टीपल सेक्टर्स में एक साथ इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो। अगर एक इन्वेस्ट